Hey everyone, welcome to our next episode of Therapyology Thursdays. I'm Brooke Bendix, founder and owner of Therapyology, and I am sitting here with the wonderful Kris Miller, who founded On a Dragonfly Wings. And we're going to be chatting with her a little bit about her organization and the work that she does. So thank you so much, Kris, for joining us today here.
Thanks for having me, Brooke. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about who you are and what you have created.
Okay. Um, I'm just a mom. I'm not clinical by any means. I
Hmm.
always preface it with that just so that people don't have super high expectations. My 15-year-old son, Nikolai, died by suicide when he was 15 years old. This was 4 years ago. And at the time of his death, we thought as parents that we were doing all the things that you should be doing. We had him in counseling. He saw his social worker at school. His teachers were aware. Um, we were having open conversations at home. We thought we were doing all the right things. And never in our wildest dreams thought that it would come to him making the decision to take his own life. And the more that I learned after the fact, I had attended a suicide prevention training,
Hmm.
and then I started guest speaking at some. And the more I learned, the more I realized perhaps there were things that I missed,
Hmm.
that our family missed. And if I didn't know and I was like right in the middle of it and I thought I was doing the right thing, then that means there's a whole lot of families out there
Yeah.
who are going through very similar circumstances that also don't necessarily know what to look for in regards to suicide. So I started just some social media and just
Hmm.
trying to educate on mental illness, mental wellness, um, suicide prevention, and honestly it was a place for me to kind of also uh, grieve.
Hmm.
So a lot of my grief journey also came out through this entire process and what that looks like as a suicide survivor.
Right.
And then fast forward to 2022, I finally decided that there were bigger things out there that I wanted to do with this, and there were more lives that I wanted to
Hmm.
potentially impact on a grander scale. And so I made the decision to start a nonprofit called On a Dragonfly's Wings.
That was
Um,
just last year? Oh
yes,
my
yeah, we just
gosh.
celebrated our year in February.
Wow.
Yeah, I got the IRS letter on Valentine's Day of 2022.
Amazing.
So,
Wow.
yep. So we're just, what, barely, I guess, not even 18 months in.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So how'd you come up with the name and like the significance behind all of that? Because I know what it takes to start up something in organization, especially
Mhm.
501(c)(3.
Yeah.
And for you, there's so much personal history or like backstory behind it, which is amazing. But what was in the creation of of all of that like for you and coming up with all of that?
So on a dragonfly's wings, really within just a few days after Nikolai's death, I started to see dragonflies. And I didn't really pay that much attention at first.
Hmm.
Um, and then it became more and more obvious, almost like kind of in my face a little bit. So, and it was always when I was feeling like I really needed to talk to him
Mm.
or
Yeah.
I needed some form of comfort. I was really in a very deep grief space. And I just started seeing them everywhere. And it kind of became, oh, I think this is Nikolai.
Mm.
And the one day it was my birthday, and we were sitting at a baseball game for my other son, and a red dragonfly, and Nikolai's favorite color is red.
Mm.
A red dragonfly came and sat on the tip of my tennis shoe
Wow.
and never left. And for me, that was just a sign that he was thinking of me and that he was there.
Yeah.
And dragonflies also spiritually represent the movement from darkness into light.
Hmm.
And so for me, he had a mental illness
Hmm.
and he was in a very dark space. He lived in a very dark
Mm.
space. And when he died, I'm also very faith filled. So for me, he moved on to the light of heaven.
Mm.
So moving from darkness into light. So for me, it was very spiritual as
Yeah.
well. So on a dragonfly's wings
Wow.
was born. It's very long, but I like it.
I love it. And I love the symbolic meaning behind it and how personal it is to you because explaining that story and hearing that story, you didn't just pluck it out of nowhere.
Right.
It's like personal to you.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so where do you see this journey for you going, and what is the mission? Obviously, like you have a personal passion and a drive
Mhm.
for these issues and these topics, and you're also very like politically driven too to
Mhm.
make larger changes within our society and the state of Michigan. But where do you see this going, and how do you see this impacting teens and families in the world of suicide awareness?
Um, we're really trying to work with families in particular to try and help them know how to have a conversation
Mm.
with their kids because I feel like your kids don't just get to middle school and start to have all these crazy hormones and just all of a sudden something happens or a mental illness occurs. This leads up over several
Right.
years, many years, could be their lifetime. Nikolai really, I think, suffered from some form of depression most of his life.
Hmm.
And it just became very extreme. Tied in with he had anxiety, tied in with he was also diagnosed with ADHD, which
Hmm.
has all kinds of, things going around with it too. He's
Right.
very impulsive and
Yeah.
different things. Um, and I think that there's a certain language, there's a certain way that we can talk to our kids and help them and have those open conversations with them.
Hmm.
And that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to start with families young and work their way up so that hopefully we're building in some coping mechanisms for
Hmm.
kids, conversation starters for parents, so that hopefully when they get to that middle school and that high school level and things become very hormonal and very hard and
Yeah.
just, there's all the pressures, peer pressures and social media pressures and just
Right.
all of those things in the world going on. And hopefully we have developed a support system for
Hmm.
them in place. So our biggest event that we have is in January every year, and it's called the Winter World of Love and Kindness. And you
It's
have
so
you have been
fun.
there both years that we've had it so far.
We
So
loved
thank
it.
you.
Yeah.
Yes. So this last year was the biggest we had.
Hmm.
We saw over 200 kids and their
It was
families at
amazing.
this event.
Yeah, it was so cool.
Yeah, so we bring in all kinds of different partners from MDHS to Common Ground to
Hmm.
therapy groups
Yep.
like Therapyology,
Yeah.
and we do different activities. We do worry boxes, so the kids actually are building their
Yeah.
own worry boxes, and they're building glitter jars for breathing,
Hmm.
and they're just learning all kinds of different techniques and different things that they can do. We do a dance marathon, so
It was so fun.
movement is so key.
Therapy dogs. Boo
Yeah,
was there.
yes,
He loved
everybody
it.
loves Boo. He's so fun. So yeah, just showing them different ways of,
Hmm.
when you get in a space where maybe you're a little sad or,
Yeah.
you have things going on that you can kind of reach into your toolbox, I will
Right.
call it, and pull out something that, will work for you. And maybe that one thing doesn't work right away and you have to pull out something
Right.
else. But at least we're giving them some tools
Yeah.
young so that they can,
Yeah.
work with that.
So you said something that kind of stuck out when you were talking about this whole journey. And we as therapists and social workers are trained in suicide prevention and how to talk to young kids and teens and parents and educate. But sometimes we get questions from parents and about, how young is too young to start having that conversation about suicide awareness, especially to parents, because,
Mhm.
we'll get those questions about, or the warning signs, let's just say, because, you mentioned that Nikolai was probably struggling with depression most of his life,
Mhm.
and those warning signs may have stuck out. But for parents who maybe do have that in the back of their minds, or the greater, society, who kids, we want them to be kids, but
Mhm.
we sure know that in the last 3 to 5 years, that suicide rates amongst younger kids have skyrocketed.
Yes.
It's frightening.
Yes.
So, how do we go about educating and kind of breaking that stigma of how young is too young to start having those conversations about like suicide awareness and under, young kids even understanding like what that is?
I'm going to say that I don't think it's ever too young.
Mm-hmm.
The CDC just came out with I believe it was their 2022 suicide statistics. And one of the age groups that jumped um, quite largely, I want to say it was maybe 8%,
Mm-hmm.
was the 10 to 14.
Mm,
So, I mean,
yeah.
when you're 10 years old, you're in what, fourth, fifth grade, something like that?
Yep. I'd say late elementary school to um, almost high school. So like that middle school range, and we've seen it and heard about it quite significantly within our own community.
And it's
Yeah.
very frightening when you think a 10-year-old
Hmm.
is
Yeah.
actually taking their own life. Do they, it goes back to that question of do they even understand what that means?
Talking about death. Right.
I mean, so, I think having those conversations about, how they feel and what space they're in, and
Hmm.
being open about life and death and the finality of death, and just, I mean, I think that's a really important conversation to have.
Right. Absolutely. So like, what would you say to parents as you're on this path of creating more awareness about suicide prevention? So like what do we want parents to know and be aware of as we're providing more education and awareness?
Oh, I say this over and over and over again, have real and open conversations.
Hmm.
And I know it's really, really hard.
Hmm.
It's hard because it's uncomfortable, right? Mental illness is uncomfortable. Mental wellness is uncomfortable. Suicide is
Right.
definitely uncomfortable. And there's a lot of stigma around it as well,
Hmm.
So and I fall into this category as well, when Nikolai was, probably again around 11, 12,
Hmm.
13, when I noticed that things were starting to get a little bit more severe, you tend to brush it under the rug, right? Like it'll go away. It's just hormones. It's going to be
Right.
fine. It'll go away. Um, that's the time when the real conversations, the uncomfortable, the hard
Yeah.
has to happen. And um, so I would say that that's key. That's
Yeah.
that's number one. And if your child is not, if they're showing some behavioral issues, if they're starting to talk a certain way, if they're using different language,
Hmm.
um, it's time to be just really upfront,
Yeah.
and don't be afraid to just ask them, are you suicidal? Or
Yeah.
are you thinking about taking your own life? Um, that is one thing that everyone says, oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that because
Yeah.
that puts the idea in their head. That's a complete falsehood.
Hmm.
It does the exact opposite, actually, and it's been proven that by asking them that really hard question, are you thinking about taking your own life? It actually shows support.
Right.
And it shows that you recognize that they're in a really hard space, and that you're able to then, I think, open up that dialogue a little bit
Yeah.
more and have those hard conversations. Um, but also recognize that you don't have to do it alone as a parent
Right.
either, right?
Right.
So, I mean, finding a support group for parents,
Yep.
I think is critical,
Yeah.
and having conversations with other parents who are experiencing something very similar to you.
Right.
Maybe doing group counseling or group therapy with
Hmm.
your child. They should be doing something on their own. But I think as a family, it's very hard on families, from our experience. It's
Yeah.
very difficult for a family unit
Hmm.
to have someone in their household who's struggling. There's a lot of attention placed on that.
Yeah.
Other siblings feel left out. There's just a lot of different dynamics that go on, and I think that that's really critical as
Yeah.
well.
I think it opens up those lines of communication between a
Mhm.
parent and a child
Yeah.
and provides a lot of validation and support, like you
Mhm.
said, that it's not shunning or shaming them per
Right.
se, that this is not something that we talk about. Death is not something we talk about. And death makes people very uncomfortable.
Oh, very
Very
uncomfortable.
uncomfortable. But I'm
Yes.
sure you and I can probably talk about death till we're blue in the face
Yes.
and still have like comfortability about
Mhm.
it because it's been such a part of our lives.
Right.
And so, especially with kids, normalizing that, not death per se, but normalizing having those conversations about it.
Mhm.
And we're even trained to use terms that they're able to connect with, such as, do you ever think about dying?
Mhm.
Do you want to live?
Those are great
You know,
questions. Yeah.
tell me why you want to live.
Yeah.
Right? And those answers can be very surprising or shocking and really telling too,
Yeah.
because you'd be surprised at how many 8, 9-year-olds sometimes we see coming in for therapy and they answer those questions. You know what? Sometimes they don't. They don't. And talking to young kids and teens about, well, why are you here? Like,
Mhm.
tell me what you have to live for. Let's talk about that. And so much we see, as therapists, we see kids and teens with a variety of different issues and things they're coming in to talk about. But a lot of it, is focused on school and academics and
Yes.
family and home life, but really like what's happening internally and what they're going through. And a lot of those questions are significantly overlooked.
Yep.
So having the tools and the awareness and educating people, especially not just from a micro level, but what you're doing from a macro level too, and providing this education and awareness politically, like kind of going into, um, you know, uh, really advocating for more suicide prevention and awareness is
Mhm.
absolutely huge.
Yeah. And there's not enough of that. There's a lot of talk about it,
Right.
but
Yeah.
there's not a lot of action that actually occurs around it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and there's a lot of dollars apparently floating out there,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
but what's happening with those dollars?
Right. Yeah. So what would you like to see happening, whether it be kind of in the state of Michigan moving forward, or just like in our schools, like the first line of defense, kids are usually in school,
Right.
right? So what do teachers, professionals, and parents need to know or be aware of? There's an increase in suicide prevention in schools, safe talks, like all of that we know are happening. Most everyone who's in the mental health profession is pretty significantly trained in suicide prevention and awareness. But the parents who aren't, or maybe the teachers who haven't, what would you like to kind of see happen in our school systems and maybe even grander scale?
So much,
I
so
know.
much. Where do I even start? Um, I don't think there's anywhere near enough education in our
Mhm.
school system for mental health and suicide prevention.
I concur.
I believe that some school districts are doing it very well,
Hmm.
and I think that others are doing it mediocre, and some are not doing it at all. And again, I think it goes back to, as adults, if we ignore it, it'll go away.
Hmm.
And that's not what's happening. It's actually escalating. And we're really in the middle of what I would like to call a mental health crisis.
Yeah. Yep.
And there's a lot that needs to happen. I have been advocating with many politicians to um, get in some form of mandatory law to get all public school staff, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking bus drivers, food service,
Mm-hmm.
teachers, administrators, educated in suicide prevention and mental health. And I mean, our kids spend 8, 9 hours a day
Yeah.
in school. And then if they're in sports or theater or music or whatever, they're doing after school, right? So
Right.
then they've got, mentors there,
Mm-hmm.
mentors in clubs, or they have coaches. And there really needs to be some kind of formal training that occurs, and I mean at least once a year, because you
Yeah.
have new teachers coming in, you have teachers retiring. Um, every year it needs to be something that
Yep.
there's focus on. And I think that there needs to be more programs for our kids
Mhm.
and for our parents.
And we do fire drills, we do tornado drills, we do
Yeah.
first aid, prevention. We do all of this to
Mhm,
provide for our physical safety. But,
mhm.
the greater need for mental safety,
Yep.
what is being done to provide that?
Right.
Yeah.
It's critical. I mean, I will tell you that my passion really came from this specifically. So the very last parent teacher conference that I went to for Nikolai before he died,
Mm.
and I sat down with his social studies teacher, and he literally threw his arms up in the air and was like, "Your child is a behavior problem."
Wow.
And if I were you as a parent, I would start looking into some form of military boot camp.
Wow.
So this comes from an educator,
Yeah.
not a young educator, um, but an educator who was looking at my child with a behavior problem. And instead of talking to Nikolai or calling in his parents and saying, okay, so these are the things that I'm noticing,
Right.
what is going on? Can we get to the crux of some of this? How can we help him? What can we do? Instead, it was he wrote him off as a behavior
Mm.
problem. So for me, right there, that's why we need
Absolutely.
education in
Yeah.
our schools.
And when you say that as a social worker, I think about, okay, well, I've heard stories of kids who are hungry because they only have 20 minutes to eat for lunch, or they,
Yes.
didn't eat enough, or they didn't sleep the night before because they're afraid to go to sleep or they're having sleep issues. So,
Mhm.
you know, um, whether it's appetite or sleep or anxiety, they're not focusing and not paying attention. So
Mhm.
then they might be chatting and
Right.
being disruptive. And
Mhm.
those are the behavioral issues. So, as we are trained as social workers, we see a person in an environment. And, I'm not saying that teachers don't see that as well, but in that unfortunate case, a teacher was writing off a kid
Mhm.
and saying, you know what, they're a problem. Instead of saying exactly what you said, okay, this is what I'm noticing, that they're being disruptive, they're talking out, like, what is going on?
Right.
Maybe he needs to see an outside professional, or maybe we need to figure this out together.
Right.
And that's the unfortunate part of what is missing in some schools and why they're not getting the help and the support that they need.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. I really, there's some great teachers out there. There's way more great than there are not so great.
Yeah.
However, if we don't help them, I mean, they're not trained clinically either,
Right. Right.
nor should they be, but they should at least be trained so that they can recognize and then be able to support or find additional resources for support.
Right.
So the only way that they're going to know that or understand that is if they're trained that way.
Yeah.
And it's the same goes for parents. I think, um, you know, if we can offer some form of parenting class,
Mm-hmm.
that maybe it's a series and it,
Yeah.
covers different topics about, having the hard conversations with your
Mm-hmm.
kids and kind of giving them some guidance on how to do that.
Yeah.
Because again, parents, I mean, what is it? The meme joke, there's no instruction booklet that
Right.
comes with your kid when they're born. I mean, we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants
Yeah.
too as
Yeah.
parents,
Yeah.
right? So, you know, to educate parents as well
Right.
on how to do some of those things is just as important as anything.
How to support your kid and have
Mhm.
those conversations.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
And what to do. And then even within the peer group within schools, just to have different events or different mentoring programs or something
Mm-hmm.
in place where, kindness is at the top,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
we're focusing on kindness and helping others and
Mm-hmm.
supporting our friends and, not if you see somebody sitting by themselves at a table,
Yeah.
what would you do in that instance? So it's just kind of a global.
Right. So, what would you say to a parent who either wants to be more educated in suicide prevention and awareness, or even kind of get more involved in your organization because it's something maybe they're passionate about as well? Like, what would you say to them if they wanted to connect with you more on that?
So, if they're really looking to get more educated, first and foremost, I would recommend that they take a Safe Talk
Mm-hmm.
or a Talk Saves Lives program. So,
Yeah.
Talk Saves Lives is through the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. Safe Talk is through Oakland County
Mm-hmm.
Suicide Prevention. They're free. They don't
Yeah.
cost you anything. So you can go to either of those websites
Mm-hmm.
and look for local training and sign up for that. Those were really amazing for me. That's really where I learned the most information was
Yeah.
from those programs. And then as far as getting involved with kind of on more my level, volunteer.
Yeah.
I mean, especially at our Winter World of Loving
Mm-hmm.
Kindness event, because you get to see firsthand the kids and the families, and you get to work with them
Yeah.
and have small conversations with them and help them with an activity, and you're seeing the impact at that level
Right.
of what's happening and how you can build that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I would
It's
say
awesome. We love that.
volunteer. We love volunteers.
Awesome. Well, Kris, thank you so much for coming here today and joining us on our Therapyology Thursdays.
Absolutely.
And it was very enlightening to get to talk to you and learn more about your mission, your story, and what you've been up to. And it's so incredibly inspiring. And hopefully, we get to coordinate and do some more work together and some more
Yes.
events. And, Therapyology loves to kind of support on a Dragonfly with Wings and be a part of everything that you're doing. So keep up the amazing work and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Hi, everybody.